Today we're talking about underrated horror movies, those hidden gems that we all love finding. Finding those underrated horror movies are like winning a prize. You watch horror films hoping to find that diamond in the rough, and when you do, you want to share that film with everyone you know. These films stay with you for a long time. Let's take a look at some honorable mentions. Pin from 1988. Sandra Stern had a ridiculously underrated gem with Pin. The film stars David Hewlett, Cynthia Preston, and Terry O'Quinn and centers around Leon, who finds solace in an imaginary friend, Pin, which happens to be an anatomy doll from his father's doctor's office. As the doll begins to take over Leon's life, things start to get frightening. You'll see some similarities in Psycho to Pin, but it is definitely not a clone of that classic. Next up is Funny Games from 2007. Michael Hanek's slow-burning psychological thriller is a remake of the director's own previous work, identical down to the last frame. Of course, there are differences between the two, and Hanek's Austrian original earns more acclaim for originality, but the 2007 iteration is better than you remember. An incredibly unnerving, deeply unusual home invasion film that unfolds in near real time. The American Funny Games benefits most from its star power. Tim Roth and Naomi Watts play the tortured couple, but it's the villainous Michael Pitt and Brady Corbett who keep the whole disturbing endeavor together. Next up is Dead Silence from 2007. A young widower returns to his hometown to search for answers to his wife's murder, which may be linked to the ghost of a murdered ventriloquist. If you're looking for creepy dolls or a scary ghost lady, look no further. Triangle from 2009. Severance director Christopher Smith went from workplace slasher to time-looped oddities with Triangles, which starred Melissa George as troubled mother Jess, who takes a yacht trip with a friend, Michael Dorman, and his friends, including Liam Hemsworth. Severance itself just missed this list actually, but Triangle is an amazing film that keeps the viewer engaged for the entire film, wondering what will happen next. Splinter from 2008. Toby Wilkins' debut Splinter brings the monster movie subgenre of horror back to horror in a small but surprisingly effective way. Rather than stretching its budget thin with the widespread use of locations, Splinter takes place almost entirely within a podunk convenience store as a happy young couple, played by Paulo Costanzo and Jill Wagner, are forced to fight for their survival with an escaped convict, Shay William, and his girlfriend, Rachel Curbs. The spiny creature makes for some uncomfortable scenes. The Descent from 2005. The story of an expedition that goes horribly wrong and a good reason to never ever try exploring caves. 6 women head underground to explore uncharted passages, lose their way, and find themselves fending off what lives below. Being lost underground is a real-life fear with that claustrophobia and fear of small dark places. Let's jump into the top 10 list. Number 10, Creep from 2015. Patrick Brice's Creep is a different kind of film. First off, I like Creep 2 as much as Creep, but to be able to add more films to the list, I will kind of cheat a little and put Creep here. But we'll tell you to watch both films. The film only has 2 visible actors, Patrick Brice as an unwitting documentarian answering a Craigslist ad, and Mark Duplass as Joseph, who's as strange as can be. To tell you too much about this film would be a disservice, so check Creep out. This is one of the few films where the writer and director also star in a film, and I actually liked it. Number 9, Bay of Blood from 1972. It's hard to say that a Mario Bava film is underrated, but it feels like most horror fans are not familiar with this one. Bava's 1972 Ecologica del Delito, Ecology of Murder, first retitled Twitch at a Death in Her for U.S. distribution, now known to the English-speaking world as Bay of Blood, was a direct documented influence on Friday the 13th. Check out some kills almost shot scene for scene in Friday the 13th Part 2. Bay of Blood is hardly the first Bava film with a high body count, but this is one of my favorite films of his, and the twists and turns in the story make for great viewing. Number 8, Audition, 1999. Widower and documentary director Ayo played by Ryo Ishibashi, has not gotten back into the dating game since the death of his wife. His friend, Yoshikawa, played by Jun Kunimura, suggests that Aoma hold auditions. The women think they're trying out for a film, but in actuality, they're auditioning to be Aoma's girlfriend. Aoma focuses on beautiful, shy women haunted by childhood abuse. Although the director Takashi Miike is known for his scenes of extreme violence, Audition has a subversive subtlety. Back in the early 2000s, Audition was talked about a little, but it feels like most people have forgotten about this one. Number 7, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon from 2006. This slasher mockumentary from director Scott Glosserman takes an incredibly simple premise. A documentary team takes local killer Leslie Vernon into giving them behind-the-scenes look at his annual movie-modeled murder fest. And it turns into both an insanely hilarious and clever film. This is another film that's hard to say it's underrated, but the casual horror fans have never heard of this film, and that's a shame. Number 6 is Session 9 from 2001. Okay, so diehards know this film, but I can't imagine a list of underrated horror movies without mentioning Session 9. One of the most intense psychological thrillers ever created. This film was released in theaters a month before 9/11 and was quickly forgotten about because of those events. Perhaps under different circumstances, Session 9 would have been much more well known. A crew of working class folk, which includes Peter Mullen, David Caruso, Josh Lucas, and Larry Fessenden, descend to the abandoned Danvers State Mental Hospital to remove asbestos. Things immediately get creepy and unsettling for these guys. One of them discovers tape sessions with a patient who suffers from dissociative identity disorder. Brad Anderson created a gem in Session 9. Number 5 is Pontypool from 2008. Pontypool is a zombie film like no other. A small Canadian town becomes ravaged when people become obsessed with certain words, and they begin to eat each other's flesh. The film industry was being overrun by zombie films, and Pontypool was the breath of fresh air that the subgenre needed. Number 4, Strangeland from 1998. Strangeland's an American horror thriller film written by Twisted Sisters Dee Snider and directed by John Piplo. The film centers around a police detective trying to save his city as well as his daughter from an online predator who enjoys bringing enlightenment through ritual pain. The film is based off of the character introduced in Twisted Sister song Captain Howdy. Dee Snider not only wrote the film, but he also does an amazing job as the title character. Number 3 is Frailty from 2001, the directorial debut of co-star Bill Paxton, quickly became one of my favorite horror movies of all time. This Southern Gothic tale follows Paxton's nameless dad and his sons, played by Matt O'Leary and Jeremy Sumter, into the dark following an angel's appearance and subsequent demands that the dad kill off evil demons walking the earth as regular people. Words cannot begin to describe how well this film plays out. Number 2, Identity from 2003. Identity is one of the most underrated films ever and is directed by James Mangold via screenplay by Michael Cooney. The film stars John Cusack, Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet, Alfred Molina, Clea Duvall, and Rebecca De Mornay. Talk about a film that does a lot in its short run time. It will have you guessing during the entire film until the payoff at the end. And number 1 is Wreck from 2007. While most people will probably remember the American remake Quarantine, Jamie Belangero and Paco Plaza's ridiculously intense found footage film Wreck is vastly superior in every single way. If you're looking for a film to scare you, this is it. A TV reporter played by Manuela Velasco and her cameraman are interviewing emergency workers when there's a strange disturbance inside an apartment building. From there, everything goes haywire. So that wraps this one up. I want to hear from you. Post your thoughts on this video and let me know how these films impacted your love for horror. That's it for this episode. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you share this video. Make sure you subscribe. But most of all, make sure you keep it horror.